Welcome to Body Bags, presented by the Kokomo Lantern. My name is Jeremy Gieger, and I'm one of the co-owners and funeral directors here at City of First Cremation. Today I kind of want to talk to you about skills and traits that may be good for you as a person who has an interest in working at a funeral home. You don't have to be a licensed funeral director or embalmer to have an interest to work at a funeral home. We have a couple of different employees here that one is an intern who went to mortuary school, and she is working towards getting her funeral director's license. The other gentleman that works for us has a background in factory manufacturing and has a military background. Grew up with me. He's one of my good friends, but he asked me about working at the funeral home, and I've let him kind of spend some time, and it's kind of interesting to see him develop, and that's what's caused me to kind of have this conversation with you this evening. So I think some of the things that are good for you as an employee at the funeral home is communication skills. Whether it's talking to somebody in the parking lot who's going to the cemetery, or they pulled in the parking lot and you opened up the door for them to let them in, and they're asking you, hey, where's the restroom? Do you know where the family is? Have you seen Grandma Betty? Is she here? These things, get familiar with the family when you go in. Even though you may not be a funeral director, doesn't mean that you shouldn't know the community members that you're serving. So being able to have a connection with them is a great skill to acquire. So that way when you're communicating with the guests that come in, you're going to know who Grandma Betty was. And, oh no, she's sick this evening. I heard that from the spouse. She told me that she was sick and she'll try to be here tomorrow for the funeral. Or having the ability to know where to direct people, where the restrooms are, where you're going for the cemetery. Those are some good skills to have. Another thing is the ability to work with people well is very important, because we deal with different generations, we deal with different cultures. So being flexible and open to some of those things is very important. So that way you can understand, you may not agree with it, but you understand where they're coming from, and you're able to, once again, communicate to them the correct things and rituals that may need to be conveyed to them. The prayer cards are over with the register book, or please light a prayer candle and leave your prayer candle light money in this box. There's different things that you're going to need to know working at funeral homes. And it's not something that you're going to go into with like a handbook of, hey, we're going to the Catholic Church today, so here are their rituals and procedures that we do. Definitely starting out, you're going to kind of be the guy sitting back watching and learning, but ask lots of questions to your coworkers about, like, hey, why did that guy get a incense and light the red candle, and then I seen another person come and they got a smaller candle and they lit the blue candle? Well, you explain to them that there's no differences in the candles. You get to pick your own, and maybe the incense was to be put in the sand to memorialize or help that soul pass through to the other side. Another thing that I think is really important as a employee at the funeral home is the flexibility of a work schedule. Having the options to be on call is great for you, but you have to know that, I may not be sitting at the actual funeral home. I'm still got a little bit of a life. I can go out to eat, or we can go to the mall, but being flexible to know that you have to leave those situations, so you may have to drive separate from your friends or whoever you're going with, and being okay to cancel your plans sometimes. You never know when death's going to occur. So being extremely flexible and open to some of these things can be a challenge as an employee at the funeral home, because your friends, you're like, hey, it's Friday, like the weekend started. What do you mean you're on call? Like, well, it's so the other person can actually be like you guys and not have the responsibility to go pick up Grandma Betty who passed away at 3 a.m. They're able to sleep. They may come in that Saturday and meet with Grandma Betty's family, but they didn't have that restraint of being on call. So that the flexibility with your hours is really important. And to know that, hey, the funeral home may have you come in at 9 o'clock and you're to work till 1 or 2 when the funeral ends. Well, you know what? The funeral really may end at 1. It may be 3 by the time you're done at the church and the cemetery and you're back to the funeral home and you're putting away the flower stands and the parking flags and getting the van cleaned up. You know, being flexible with your time. It's really important. The hours of work, it's not something that it kind of goes hand in hand with that flexibility, because being on call, you may not get called out. So you may just kind of get to chill at home and do your thing, or you may be out all night long knowing that come the morning hour, you're going to need to get cleaned up and be ready to do it all over again, or go home, get a little bit of sleep, and you're coming back and you're working visitation that evening or funeral service that afternoon. So the hours are really, really broad. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's a set 40 hours. Now, there are larger firms that are out there that they want to stick to the 40-hour or less schedule to avoid overtime and things. But in the smaller realm of things, for like me, and it's kind of been this way most of the places I work, 40 hours is just another week, or 70 hours, it's just another week. It really, it's how the death industry is. You have to be accepting of the ebb and flows where it's feast or famine. You're either super busy or you're super slow. Take advantage on your slow times. Hopefully, the group that you work with, you know, hey, y'all let me go yesterday so I could go and get a round of golf in with my buddies. I'll go ahead and stick around today. Nothing's really going on. Why don't you head home? Or while you're there that week, you may choose to say, hey, if nothing's going on Wednesday, why don't you take Wednesday off as a free day? And you know, we got our butts kicked last week, so it's kind of nice to just have that flexibility for them. Other funeral homes, it's not necessarily that way. Whether you're busy or not, there's things that can always be done around the funeral home. So if you're working at one of these locations where they would like you there for your full 40 and you may not be doing stuff funeral related, you may be catching up on some of the projects and odds and ends around the funeral home. Maybe doing a little bit of painting, a little bit of cleaning, organizing, kind of getting things ready for when things break loose again to make it easier on you and the staff that's around. I think another great feature, if you're thinking of coming into the funeral industry, is having a good support system or a release of the day-to-day stress of what this funeral service industry is like. The support system could be your friends, could be your family, it could be a church family. I think that it's extremely important to be able to have people that you can confide into. Some of the things that we deal with aren't the easiest situations or stressors in our life. And as you've heard me mention in episodes before about your burden is our burden as well, that we carry some of these struggles with you. Your stories are our stories to remember. They're legacies that are tough for us to work through when we see such terrible losses for families sometimes. And it could be tragic situations like car accidents or house fires. It could be losing people at a young age. Recently, we've had some interesting ones where we've had a lot of mothers bury their children or cremate their children, and to hear them go through some of those thoughts and emotions, it's really hard to process sometimes. So having a hobby, having a craft or an interest that you like to do, it's really important. It's a way to let go of that stress, to clear out those memories, make better positive thoughts and memories, so that way when you're done with it, then your day is, it's like a whole new day for you. It feels like you've just opened up a new chapter for that afternoon or day for you. It's really, really important. Another thing that I want to kind of talk about that I think's maybe a good skill or a feature to have, I think is your presentation. I don't want to say that having a clean haircut and a clean shaved face is important, but I think your hygiene is important. It's something that we definitely kind of pick up on when you come into the funeral home. Are your fingernails trimmed and clean? Do you have facial hair? Is it kind of maintained? I know mine's longer. I'm definitely pushing that edge of the risky side in the funeral industry, but in my eyes, it's me. It's who I am. I think that it's okay. I haven't had anybody complain about my beard, but I know that it also is comforting to some of the families that we serve, that they know, like, that's who he is. It isn't an appearance that we should feel is right. I think that your clothing and dress should be appropriate. I don't think you have to worry about like showing up in a suit, but having clean clothes, something respectable is really important for that. And like I mentioned, your role at the funeral home could be so wide. Wouldn't it be weird that if you're looking for somebody to kind of do maintenance and groundskeeping around the funeral home, he come in a suit, a three-piece suit, to interview or talk to you about this? That's not who that person is. But if they came in their jeans or their t-shirt and shorts and they interviewed with you and you thought, wow, this person's got a really good skill, they've seemed pretty motivated, I think it'd be a good fit. You never know. It could turn into that position for you, or an opportunity where they'll come back and say, hey, you're doing so well, you've made some connections working around the funeral home. How about you take on some more responsibilities? Do you want to work visitations? Do you want to work funerals? Would you be interested in going on house calls and removals with the families? There may be some opportunities where you could do some aftercare follow-up with families when the funeral and services are over, just checking in with them to see if they have any other questions, if there's other services or maybe accessories for the funeral that they're interested in. Just that connection with those families. You never know where that may lead you. You don't have to be a funeral director to work at a funeral home. I just want to make that really important to you, because as a funeral director, owner, and director, it was always nice to have supporting staff to be there. And there were a lot of times where we didn't have supporting staff, where I was maybe relying on another funeral director when it was their short week going into their weekend off to kind of help me fill in some of my gaps, and then I would return that favor. But to have somebody that's there is really, really crucial. Couldn't say enough to thank you, Erica and Brandon, for being that support here. But it's really, really cool to see the growth in these people, because everywhere I've worked and we've had some of these people, they have had a very different background, and they would have never guessed in their wildest dreams or thoughts that they would have ended up working at a funeral home. And they love it because it's different. It's not necessarily that doom and gloom and sorrow. It's a lot of different interactions with people in our community that we're able to create some really good friendships. And when we see them out and about, they remember what you did for them and the impact that it was. So those are some skills and traits that I think are really important for the funeral service industry. I think if you've got questions or interest, go to your local funeral home, pick their brain, talk to them. We like having those conversations. You may not catch us at the best time. We'll let you know what works. Like, hey, we just had a really crazy busy day. I would love to share some things with you and get to know you. Can we get together tomorrow or the next day? Work that time out. But yeah, it's really, really neat. Even talk to those that may not be a funeral director. Ask them what led them into those positions, what led them to that role. So that is one of my topics for you on this month. I want to end a story about some crazy funeral services that I had, and a couple of them kind of come to mind. One being a Hell's Angel funeral in Cincinnati. Was for this biker that was shot in a drug deal. It was not good. I was not there for the funeral portion. I was sent to the cemetery to just kind of make sure that the drive would remain open and be ready for the parade of motorcycles that were to be following the procession. We had the committal service with the minister, and then everybody said their final goodbyes to the family, and then his motorcycle brotherhood kind of stood off to the side, and they waited till everybody left for their part of their ceremonial ritual. They placed some alcohol and some drugs into the casket vault with the deceased. They pulled out a firearm. They shot through the casket into the deceased. Completely threw me off guard, startled. What in the world's happening? They told me that it was part of their process to confirm that they were truly dead and they were not leaving the gang to either join or find safekeeping through the police, that they knew that he was dead and he needed what he needed to get to the other side. Really, really scary. The other one would be the clown funeral that I did in Peru. This was for Dr. Lloyd Hill. He was a coroner. What was really neat about that was we did it at the Big Top Circus building downtown Peru. And we had the circus band there for visitation of the funeral service. Had him on a tumbling mat. Nothing too crazy, but we did have him in his clown shoes. It was really cool to see that done. And the last one would be back to my biker. This one was really a biker thought for me when I was thinking about this. Was that commitment to the club and the finality of saying goodbye to that brotherhood and that member. So we had a club member that we had to put him in his full leather riding outfit with his vest and his patch. The club president came from out of state to witness the cremation. He stayed for the entire cremation process. He didn't necessarily sit and watch, but he sat right next to the machine from the moment we loaded until it completed, because nobody is allowed to have the patch or the vest, not even family. What was really unique about that one, I thought, was none of the stainless steel chains from the vest or anything, none of that burns up. It just turns a different color and texture. But the leather was what was interesting in that one. My cremated remains came back as kind of like a khaki army greenish color. It was so weird, so unique, and the only thing that I could think of that contributed to it was maybe the black dye into the leather. I've cremated lots of clothes and odd things. Nothing gave me strange colors like that other than this leather. I've burnt a leather vest before, but I'm talking this guy had leather boots, leather chaps, a leather vest, and a leather derby hat on. It was crazy how much black leather, but to see the colors come back as a different one was rather unique. But that commitment to the club and organization, I think was really interesting to see that group see through the final farewell of their member, whether it was making sure that the patch and the vest was gone or that actual member was gone and honored, was really, really cool to see. And I think that's how Dr. Lloyd Hill got clumped into this thought of the biker services and their way of separation, was because of that circus community. Dr. Hill was a really prominent member in that circus organization. He was a registered clown. So it was really important that circus family got to have their way of saying goodbye to him in their special way. So those are my stories for you on this episode. As time goes on, if you've got questions, comments, please leave them below. As always, like, follow, subscribe, and share. And I'd like to thank the Kokomo Lantern for contributing to the podcast and sharing these episodes and stories with you guys. But this does conclude my services here this evening. You all have a good one. Bye.